Hello, everybody. It's me, your Facebook friend, Shannon LaBruyere. I am alive and loving it tonight. So excited to be back on Sunday Night Live, talking to my friends, sharing a little bit about how we can all thrive in the midst of change, big change, small change. Hi, Terry. I'm glad you jumped on. Thanks for being here. I had the most amazing afternoon. Isabel, yay! Welcome. I had a great afternoon doing some leadership training for the leaders at the Apostolic Church of Flat Rock here in Michigan. It was an amazing time, and it was super amazing because I learned something. So for me, the best thing ever is when, hi Laura, I'm so glad you're here. I was thinking about you today. For me, the best thing ever is when I'm training people and helping them to learn and grow, but I also get to learn and grow myself. And they had some really great comments. Richard Krieger, hi, and thanks for jumping on. So I learned a lot today in Flat Rock, and I loved sharing with the leaders that were there. We're going through John Maxwell's book, Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. It is a fantastic primer, if you will, for how to become a better leader. And if you've never read it, I encourage you, jump in. You can get it on Amazon for about $12, or you can get it from the library. I'm sure it's there. Laura Bartley, I'm so glad you're here. Mary, welcome. Shadi Sean, yay! I am so glad you guys are jumping on tonight because this is going to be a great lesson. I am talking today about the three intentional choices you can make to ensure that you grow in the midst of change. Because the bottom line is change happens all the time, right? All the time. Nothing stays the same. The only thing that's constant is change. Somebody smart said that, it wasn't me. But anyway, so tonight we're going to talk about those three things, and I'm glad you joined us. So let's get started. If you know somebody who's going through change, or if you know somebody who's not great at change, you might want to tag them on this and they'll have a chance to jump in, because I would love to share this with as many people as possible, because this is powerful stuff and it helped me to thrive, and I know it's going to help you thrive, and it'll help the people that you share it with thrive. So feel free to tag them, invite them to jump in. I'd love to meet them. If you're new today, put in the comments where you're from. I'd love to know where you're watching from. If you're in the Eastern time zone, or if maybe you're in another country. I know I've had people on from Bermuda and Barbados, so that's always cool. Jackie, I'm so glad you jumped on. All right, so let's get started. So have you ever stopped and looked around and realized that everything around you is totally different than it was 2 years ago? Lots of organizations have gone through significant change in the last 2 years. Lots of them have gone through significant change in the last 2 weeks, and some of us have gone through significant change in the last 2 days. Hi, Jackie. The bottom line is that change happens everywhere. Every organization, every family, every person experiences change, and I think we all kind of understand that. But this is what we don't sometimes get. Just because we're changing, just because things are changing, doesn't mean that we're growing. It doesn't mean that we're getting better, that we're learning, that just because the circumstances around us are changing doesn't mean that we are changing in a positive way. If that were the case, we'd have world peace, right? I mean, so much change going on. If change automatically led to growth, we'd all be like superheroes out there. We'd be singing Kumbaya and holding hands, but we all know that that's not the case. So this is the thing. The fact is, whether it's our business, whether it's our personal life, whether it's our home, our family, our environment, the weather, oh my gosh, the weather in Michigan has been like whiplash. We had polar vortex, and then 4 days later it was 55 degrees. So no matter what, change is going to happen. Change is inevitable. But here's the good news. Growth is optional. It is your choice. You can choose to grow in the midst of it. So these are the three things. All right, there are so many ways to grow. There are so many choices you can make in regards to growth that it would take us forever to go through all of them. So These three things I'm going to share with you are not the only things. There are lots of other tools that you can use to grow in the midst of change. But I think these three are a great start. I think they're the foundation. They're the foundation for starting a process for ourselves of continually growing and thriving in the midst of what's going on. So realistically, this could be a 3,000 part series on growth, but we're just going to make it a 3-part series. Hi, Natalie, or Nathan, I mean, glad to have you. And Barbara, so glad you're here. It could be a 3,000 part series, but we're only going to make it a 3-part talk tonight. And then maybe I'll go into some other of the laws of growth a little bit further down the road. All right, so are we ready? The first rule is this. The first choice is you can choose to be intentional about growth. You can choose to be intentional. Hi, Pam. Growth doesn't happen by accident, but if you want to grow, you can make the choice to be intentional about it, to actually look for the opportunities and to make the most of them. So John Maxwell says this in his book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, which is a great one. He calls it the first invaluable law. Growth must be intentional. We all know somebody who keeps making the same mistake over and over and over. So maybe it's our aunt who keeps getting married to the wrong kind of guy and ends up being heartbroken at the end of it, repeats her mistakes over and over. Maybe it's the person who keeps hiring the same type of employee. They get that fun-loving, gregarious person, and then they're always shocked because that person doesn't love to sit down and bury his face in a bunch of accounting spreadsheets. A lot of people don't actually evaluate why they're making the choices they're making. Hi, Noah, I'm glad you're here. So we can be intentional about our growth. And so when things are going wrong, we can intentionally take a look at that and say, okay, what's going on? We a lot of times ask ourselves, am I ever going to learn? I mean, how many times am I going to make that mistake? And the truth of that is, sometimes we don't learn, but we can start now choosing to learn. For example, years ago, I got my first job, and I was a hostess at the Onion Crock restaurant at the local mall, and it was my first ever job. I was a nervous wreck. I had no idea what to expect. When I got there, they didn't do a great job of onboarding me, didn't pay a whole lot of attention to letting me know how I fit in. And so, as it turned out, I was terrible at hostessing at the Onion Crock, and they fired me. So I lost my first job within about 3 weeks. And I was so embarrassed, so crushed, that I ran away from that job and being fired, and I didn't even want to look at it. In fact, I intentionally chose to not think about it again. I didn't want to think about it. It hurt me, right? It hurt me. And so I guess that's okay, and I felt a little better, and I got over it, except for then I got another job. And I got fired from that job. So you're thinking to yourself, what, she's not going to learn? No, it took me 3 jobs getting fired before I finally, intentionally chose to grow from the experience. Sit down with myself, ask myself the hard questions. Shannon, what's going on? Why have you been getting fired from these jobs? What do you need to do differently? As soon as I did that, made the choice to take a look and make an adjustment, my next job, I kept it. I kept it for several years because I had learned from the experience. Lost 3 jobs in a row because I didn't. Who knows what good would have happened had I taken the time and intentionally chose to grow, but I didn't. A few years back, I was talking with a manager, working with him, coaching, and he had just found out that he'd received a poor performance rating at his job, and he was furious. I cannot believe it. He was mad. He was raging. He said, I've been working 60 hours a week for the past year. I'm going crazy because of this place. I barely see my family. I am getting a poor performance rating. I don't know what else they want from me. I don't think there's anything else I can do. And I asked him, would you like to change? Maybe? I don't need to change. He was adamant. I know what I'm doing. I've got it all figured out. Well, then the only advice I can give you is to, instead of getting a poor performance rating working 60 hours a week, how about you just work 40 hours a week and fail? I mean, that sounds harsh, But that's the bottom line. It was a person who was not choosing to grow, wasn't intentionally choosing to grow in the midst of change. His work environment had changed. His employees had changed. The outcome, the product that they were dealing with had changed. And yet he thought that he could stay the same and not look at what was happening around him and somehow be successful. He did not choose to grow. Don't be like him. Intentionally make the choice. What's going on? I'm going to grow in the midst of this. Jackie, I'm glad you're here. Welcome. All right. The second thing is you have to be, hold on a second. I'll put it a different way. Growth requires us to surrender our security. If we're going to grow, we can't be holding on to our life jacket and our life preserver and anchor ourselves in the shallow end of the pool, right? Growth requires a little bit of risk. I love what Abraham Maslow said about this. He's a renowned psychologist, and he said this: we are constantly choosing to either step forward into growth or we step backward into safety. Forward into growth, backward into safety. Think a little bit about what you've been going through, the changes that are happening in your life, and ask yourself this question. Have you been stepping forward into the risky unknown in the midst of those changes? Or have you been retreating, holding on, digging in, and refusing to change? Because if you're going to grow, you're going to have to let go of some of your security. And hi, Frank, I'm glad you jumped on. It's so good to see you. So growth requires us to give up some of our security. So many years ago, my first real job, like a job that had benefits and everything, was unloading a semi-trailer full of mail sacks. And I did this all day, every day. And so for a couple of years, I lifted 70-pound mail sacks by hand, and eventually I was able to get a really great job driving a forklift. Some of you know what I'm talking about. So it was awesome. I didn't have to do all that back-breaking labor. I could drive around on this awesome machine and it would do all the heavy lifting. And I even made a little bit of extra money doing it. So it was the bomb, and I had a very safe and a very secure position. It was wonderful. And then an opportunity arose for me to work in a temporary position in the front office as a secretary in a customer service style of role. And so I jumped on it because I've always loved working with people. I've always loved interacting with the public, and I loved the opportunity to better myself and be promoted perhaps someday. So I jumped at the opportunity to work at this temporary job, and I took off my steel-toed boots and I put on some high-heeled shoes, and I did that for about 6 months, and I loved it. And then one day I went and told my boss that I needed to be gone for a few weeks. And he says, why? What do you mean you've got to go? What do you mean? Why? I need you. We're right in the middle of this important stuff and you're working on it. You can't go. I need you here. Why are you leaving? And I said, well, if I don't go back and drive that forklift for a couple of weeks, they're going to take away my job and they're going to give it to somebody else. And then I will have to go back to unloading those sack trucks by hand. And he stared at me for a few moments and he said, Shannon, do you want to lift heavy things for the rest of your life? And I said, no. He said, then get off the forklift. Let it go, right? Let it go. Hi, Giselle, I'm glad you jumped on. Get off the forklift. Let go of that safe, secure thing that is okay. The only reason you love it is because it's safe, and explore taking a risk and growing in the midst of the changes that are happening. It's risky, yes, but the payoff is huge. In fact, the bigger the risk, often the bigger the payoff, just like in Vegas. But it's a lot less risky than in Vegas because you are a person of worth and value and you know what you have to offer. So letting go of that safe and secure and stepping off into the unknown isn't as risky as what it feels. Those feelings are lying to you. It's really not as risky as it feels. I just want you to know you can choose to take the risk, let go of that security, and you can grow. So that's the second choice that you can make to grow in the midst of change. So now, number three. Number three is this. You have to own your growth. You have to own your growth. A lot of times when I ask people, who's in charge of your growth? Who's in charge of you learning what you need to know? A lot of times they will point their finger at their boss. It's my boss's job. My boss gets me the training I need. My company needs to pay. If I'm going to learn to use a word processor, if I'm going to learn how to use a computer, if I'm going to learn how to be a personality behavioral specialist, then my boss needs to pay for that. My work needs to pay for that. But I want you to think about that. Who is actually in charge? When you say that it's somebody else's job to pay for you to be trained, you're putting your future in their hands. If they don't write the check, you're stuck. You're stuck. The truth of the matter is, we have to own any growth that we have. It's our responsibility and no one else's. No one. Your boss does not know what's best for you. And if you give the ownership of your future to your boss, don't be shocked if your future doesn't turn out the way you wanted. Because your boss doesn't know your heart, doesn't know what you've been called to do, doesn't know what your purpose is. Don't give away your responsibility, your privilege of being able to grow and change and be inspired as an individual. Don't hand that over to a corporate entity or a boss who doesn't know anything about you. I attend a lot of professional workshops and conferences. I pay for those. I'm so excited because I recently signed up to become certified in being a DISC personality behavioral specialist. So I'll be able to help people understand how they're wired and how they can connect with each other and how teams can work better together based on their communication styles. That was an expense. I wrote that check because I own it. I want it. I want to know how to do it. I want to add value to you. I want to be able to help teams do this. I want my business to thrive and grow and prosper. And I want to be able to continually grow and thrive and prosper. So I wrote that check. It's an investment of time. It is no quick thing to learn how to do this, but I'm plugging away at it. I'm doing it. Why? Because I own it. Yes, there will be other entities in my life, maybe my church, that gains from what I'm doing. But that's a bonus. That's a plus. If you've got a skill that you'd love to learn, don't try and make your employer pay for it or wait for them to decide that it's important for you to know. What would happen if you jumped, if you took action, if you said, hey, I need to get that certification because I want it for me. I know it's going to help me to do my job better. If you are willing to invest in yourself, your employer is going to be much more willing to invest in you. Absolutely. If you're not willing to invest in yourself, to take a risk on yourself, to write a check, to say, I'm worth it, if you're not willing to do that, if you don't see your own value, what makes you think anybody else is going to see that value for you? They're not. It's so important for us to own our growth. It's our personal responsibility. When we're willing to bet on ourselves, write the check, invest the time, others around us will be willing to invest in us too. Today at that leadership training with the people in Flat Rock at the Apostolic Church, we had a good conversation about how when we have to be willing to put ourselves out there first, we have to be willing to make the first step, to send the signal that I'm confident, that I know that I can do this, that I know I'm worth it. And when we send those kinds of signals, when we're proactive, good things start to happen. And that's actually what great leaders do. They take initiative. They don't wait until they get a title or a position to learn how to do the skill. They learn how to do the skill first, then they're ready for the position. And they don't have to get into a leadership role or a management role or maybe a technical role and have to try to catch up. They are ahead of the game. And when you live your life intentionally growing, intentionally taking action and being ahead of the game, that is very attractive. It's attractive to employers who are looking for people who have initiative and drive. It's attractive to clients who might want to hire you to do something, and they're looking at somebody that they can tell cares about what they do, invests in getting better, stays on top of their game. You will never go wrong when you invest in yourself. You have to own your growth. So, to review, these are the three things, the three choices that you can start making today that are going to allow you to thrive in the midst of change, that are going to allow you to grow when everything around you is changing, when lots of other people are hiding and holding on to their life preservers and running for the hills because they don't want to face reality. You'll be the person who stands out. You're going to be the person who's making change happen. That's for you. That's for you. When you intentionally choose to grow, you are making change happen that is for you. It's not against you. It's for you. Start doing it. Take some action. Take some ownership. So these are the things you have to remember. The first one is growth is always intentional. It never happens by accident. People do not accidentally learn to grow. We all know people who have made plenty of mistakes and they keep bumping their head on the same rock because they refuse to take a look around and say, what do I need to do differently? Don't be that person. Intentionally choose to grow. The second thing is we have to surrender security. Growing requires change and it requires risk. And we have to be willing to take the risk. To grow means we're doing something differently. We're being different people. So important. Yes, I love that heart, right? We have to be willing to take the risk to grow. And finally, we have to be willing to own our growth. It's time to stop blaming other people. It's time to stop blaming your boss, your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your kids. Stop blaming other people for you not growing. If you want to grow, you can, and you have to own it. When we blame other people and say they're preventing us from growing, we have given all of the power to them. And powerless people don't grow much. You have to own it. Own your growth. Now, doesn't mean that you have to spend $20,000, although you certainly can, and more, I'm sure. You don't have to spend a lot of money to grow. You can go to the library. Check out The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. You will love it. It's fantastic. I'll be talking some more about those laws in some of the future Sunday Night Lives. You could get the Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 by John Maxwell. It's pretty new and it's amazing. Daniel Pink has some really interesting books out there about timing. It's called When is his most recent one. Daniel Pink. It's amazing. And you'll see that at your local library. Or you can buy, these books are less than $15 on Amazon. If you go to Starbucks twice a week, you can afford to buy a book and grow. Or you can join Audible, one of those digital online books, digital books, gosh, forgetting the term now. Anyway, audiobooks, that's what I was looking for. There are ways that you can get audiobooks. Listen to it on your commute, in the car, on the train. Oh, somebody's a John Maxwell fan, absolutely. There's so much that you can do, and it doesn't have to cost you anything except for sometimes the most valuable thing you have, and that is your time. But when you invest your time in yourself, I'm so glad you're here, Emilio. When you invest your time in yourself and grow, owning it, other people see that and they respond to it, and you start creating positive change in your life. So those are the three things. Growth is always intentional, never accidental. Growth always requires us to surrender our security. It's not easy, but it is necessary. And growth is always my responsibility and no one else's. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Sunday Night Live. If you did like it, feel free to put some hearts on there or some thumbs up. I would be honored if you shared it on your timeline on Facebook to get the word out that I'm here. And also you can go to my Support Life page on Facebook and hit a like on that so you'll get some updates whenever I'm going live and when I've got other cool stuff going. And always, you can go to ShannonLabriere.com, sign up to get on my mailing list. You guys have been awesome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm honored that you jumped in, and I hope this has added value to you because you add value to me. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Bye.